Hello, and welcome to Make It Better Media Group's latest webinar, How to Lead a Sustainable Lifestyle. Before we get started, I just want to point out a few features of this webinar. If you're listening live, please feel free to put questions for the speakers in the chat. After the webinar is over, you'll have the opportunity to go to our virtual lounge for an extended Q&A session with the speakers so you can ask more detailed questions in real time. So, without further ado, let's get started. My name is Anne-Christine Strugnell. I'm the Communications Director for the Environmental Forum of Marin, and I'm also a graduate of the Climate Reality Leadership Training Program. Today, I'm excited to present inspiring speakers whose expertise ranges from architecture to food service, from hospitality to legislation. What they have in common is a deep commitment to environmental protection as well as excellence in their field. They're here today to tell you what sustainability means in their work and to provide actionable information that can help you too to lead a more sustainable lifestyle. I think you already saw that opening reel with our first speaker, Nathan Kipnis, which I found really inspiring. I'm looking forward to hearing more from him. So Nate is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, the AIA, and a principal of Kipnis Architecture and Planning, based in Evanston, Illinois, and Boulder, Colorado. His firm was named one of the top 25 environmental architecture firms in the U.S., and his designs have been extensively published locally and nationally. Nate was recently awarded the prestigious Emerald Award from the Illinois Green Alliance. Nate was an original member of the AIA's 2030 Commitment Working Group and served as a national co-chair of that committee. So the 2030 commitment helps architects design to net zero energy and carbon levels by 2030. Nate now serves on the newly formed Committee on Climate Action and Design Excellence, which is the highest ranking sustainable committee of the AIA. He is also the founder of Next House Alliance, a new premium design build concept to provide homes that are net zero sustainable, resilient, and designed to enhance air quality, comfort, and cleanliness. Nate earned a BA in Environmental Design from the University of Colorado at Boulder and a Master of Architecture degree with an emphasis in energy-conscious design from Arizona State University. He designed his first solar home in Boulder in 1983 when he was just 21 years old. Nate the Skate was a semi-professional skateboarder a long, long time ago, but continues to skateboard, snowboard, ski, and surf when the opportunity presents itself. So Nate, I see on your website that your firm is committed to high design, low carbon, sustainable architecture. That's your tagline. So can you tell us what that means? I mean, I understand the high design part, especially after seeing that beautiful starting reel, but what makes a building low carbon and sustainable?
Well, thank you for that great introduction. Yeah, the high design, low carbon, when I was in school, we had seen high performance homes, but they were terrible looking. So we wanted to integrate really good design with sustainability. The low carbon part has to do with kind of the goal right now of everything is to decarbonize, get off fossil fuels, decarbonize, and doing that both on the operational standpoint. So when you turn your lights on, heat and cool your home, but also the materials that it takes to build it. And I'm going to talk about that when I'm presenting, but those are the two things that are really important. Buildings are about 40% of the CO2 emissions. So we really, really need to make that go to zero to solve these problems we're having.
Okay, so please roll the presentation. I look forward to seeing it.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see here. Okay. So happy Earth Month to everyone. I want to talk about the work that we've done and why we do it, but I also want to talk about a part of our firm, which is, as mentioned, Next House Alliance, which is that kind of higher end, ultra high performance component that we work on. And I also just want to quickly thank the three sponsors that are helping me with this presentation. U.S. Bank, that has a 30-year fixed construction draw loan, which locks in the rate for the entire process, which at this point is pretty important. Velux skylights that we love using. They are in the process of becoming lifetime carbon neutral for the company's 82 years of operation. And Val Cucina cabinets, which are amazing modern Italian cabinets with a really rigorous sustainable circular economy story that goes back to 1968. So let's see. I am sorry. Let's just go through the next one. So this is going to show the range of work we do. As mentioned, we have an office in Evanston and we have one in Boulder, but we do work all over the place. We do work that is both historically based as well as very modern and everything in between. We like to do different sized homes and try and figure out what makes sense in each location, both kind of climatically and culturally. This is a good range of projects. The one in the lower right is one that we're working on right now in Boulder, and the other ones are all in the Chicago area. And they all have various ultra sustainable aspects to them. So we're really always thrilled to be working on projects like that. This is the team for Next House Alliance. Myself as the architect, we have a great builder, 2 interior designers, landscape architect, and a technology integrator. And the idea is that we're a collaborative team and that we really are focused on the goal of getting a really excellent, sustainable, and resilient design. I also want to just point out 3 of the sponsors on the bottom. We use all of those products, which really help the performance of the building. Savant does smart home systems as well as renewable energy management. Sierra Pacific makes beautiful windows, and Mitsubishi Electric makes the high performance all electric HVAC systems that we use in our designs. So why Next House? Well, number one, we want to live in harmony with the environment. We want to design with it and not fight it. And I think the homes that used to be done were not really taking that into account. So we like to see what the site offers and really take advantage of that. We have this exclusive team that I mentioned that we're all focused on getting that, not only a great design, which is a given, but to make it really sustainable, healthy, and resilient. And these resilient strategies, what is that? That's the ability to handle natural or man-made disasters and recover quickly. I mean, if you watch the news every day, there's something crazy going on in the weather with high winds, flooding, drought, power outages, and resilient strategies that are designed into the home are what let people feel that they have everything under control. When you look at that last screen before you go to bed, you know that your house is really set to handle all that. And our approach is, again, very collaborative, and we try and do it kind of as a concierge level quality under one roof. So if you take away nothing else, this is the slide to really pay attention to, the keys to sustainable home design. You might not be able to get all of this done, but really focusing on this is the way to make sure you get a great high performance home. So locate your home in a walkable community. In other words, that you don't need a car to go everywhere. So not the far-flung suburbs, but kind of that in between, doesn't necessarily have to be urban, but some walkable community. Evanston, where we're located, is a great example of that, as is Boulder, Colorado. Design an appropriate sized home. Doesn't mean it has to be very small. It just needs to be just the right size. So that's one of the first things we work on is if we have a big home program, we try and see how we can make it as small as possible and still make everyone happy. We energy model the design to see how it's performing very early on in the process, so we can make adjustments to keep seeing how good we are, how close we are to zero, or what we need to do. You know, each step can be analyzed to see its impact on the overall design. This next one is really important. Electrify your home. Get rid of the fossil fuels. If we want to decarbonize, that means no fossil fuels. So, and I'll explain what that specifically means in an upcoming slide. Integrate renewable energy and batteries and electric vehicle charging. Generally, the renewable energy part is solar, and it's generally roof mounted, but it could be ground mounted. The prices of all these things has come way down and continues to come down, especially for things like the batteries in electric cars. Design a tight perimeter shell. So we want to limit the air changes that are going on. We want to keep the conditioned space in there and yet also have appropriate controlled mechanical ventilation. We want to incorporate wellness principles, daylighting and comfort and many other things. We want to make sure the house is really a great place to be. Design for resilience, again, handling these weather and climate events and making sure the home can deal with them very quickly. and understand the impact of embodied carbon. So on the bottom, there's this graphic. Operational carbon is for lighting, heating, cooling, etc., refrigeration. And the embodied carbon is the manufacture, transporting, fabrication, and installation of materials. And that is a huge number. So you want local materials, you want materials that lock in carbon and things like that. So if you talk to your architect, they should hopefully understand that. And then why do we want to go to electric power? Why is that? So you look at the way electric power is generated through these different sources, and the ones that are on the right are fossil fuels, which have an amazing amount of carbon per electrical output. And coal was the worst one, still is, but we're hopefully moving away from that. Natural gas likes to be touted as much cleaner, and it's half as much as coal, but it's still quite bad. And with fracking, you have methane leaks, and you have a lot of water use, etc. So the renewable energy is really where you want to be. And in the quote, that's my little quote I like, electricity is the currency of renewable energy. We have to use that to promote renewable energy on the grid. And so how do we do this on a house? How do we electrify it? Well, there's a couple key things. Certainly in our climate in the Midwest, there's 4 major things that use fossil fuels: cooking, water heat, dryer, and your mechanical system. So for cooking, we want to go to something like an induction cooktop, which is a fantastic cooking, way better than gas. All the top chefs are moving towards this if they haven't already. Air source hybrid water heater and an air source hybrid dryer are it's not just like an electric water heater. These are much more high performance. Same with the dryer. And then we get to the mechanical system, and that would either be an air source heat pump, which is a mini split, or ground source, which is an geothermal. So those are all electric, and they're generally going to be zoned so you can condition different areas of the spaces. One thing I will point out, the condenser on the right wants to be off the ground in a climate like Chicago. We can't get snow underneath there bearing the unit, so we want to lift it off the ground a little bit. And now I want to show a few examples of some of the projects we've worked on. This was a Tesla spec home that we designed in the Chicago area, and it was to highlight the cars, the charging, the panels, the battery backup system, and do it in a really great way. So what you see here is a roof form that's facing south, and it's just one roof. And so the panels are on there. This is a net positive home. It generates more power on an annual basis than it uses, actually quite a bit more. And if you see on that picture on the right, there's that silver band, the gray band that's going through the windows about 2/3 of the way up. That's a light shelf that blocks the high summer sun and bounces it off of the light shelf deep into the space for daylighting. So it's tricks like that that are really fun to do, that really enhance the visuals that we like to integrate into this. Another project is not necessarily a next house level project, but a really good example. You want to reuse buildings because they have so much embodied carbon in them that we want to reuse them and not tear them down. So this one is kind of a very pedestrian looking 1950s home on the right. We transformed that into what we think a 1950s home should be, re-insulated it, put in the all electric systems. And the key thing about this house is that it's for aging in place. In this next slide, I'll show that. But this is on the bottom left. That's what the view looked like looking out the front. And then we opened that up. I mean, I can't even believe that was the view out the front, which is no view. And we vaulted the ceiling. And on the right, you can just barely see it, but there's the kitchen off of there. So this is not a big house. This is a 2-bedroom, but aging in place. They're literally forever home. They just absolutely love it. And we think that that's a really good idea to do. This next slide is a home that we did in Lake Zurich. And so this one is a very high performance home. It is not an illusion, but it is a curved roof and a curved garage, just slightly curved. You can see the solar panels are splayed out on the top. On the right, very high ceiling with great windows looking out at the lake. Operable Velux skylights for natural ventilation and daylighting. A big ass fan to stir the air up. And the Sierra Pacific windows, those are with special coatings based on the orientation of the windows to limit heat gain and limit UV coming in. So when we do projects like this, we do energy modeling, and the goal was to take the normal 49,500 BTUs per square foot per year and reduce that by at least 70%. So we got this one down to 71% better than baseline. I'm not going to go through all these statistics here, but basically it does offset a lot of carbon by doing this. And any power that we're not getting from the grid, from the panels, is tied into grid certified power, which you can get. You can look that up online and utilize that. So that's one way to completely carbon zero out your energy use, your electric use. And then just two more pictures of the interior. This one is showing a fireplace. We normally don't put fireplaces in high performance homes, but in this case, for resilient design, we wanted it in case there's a power outage in the winter. This is a sealed combustion. Outside air comes in, so it doesn't take conditioned air out. And then the last slide is of just the interior when you walk in. So just a really fun space, and we really enjoyed that project. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. That was really good. I enjoyed the concept of embodied carbon. I had not heard that one before, but what I had heard before is that, and what I've experienced for myself is, like you say, the price of solar panels and some of these higher end substitutes for things we used to do with gas, like heat water and heat homes. It's tremendous how much the prices have come down, which makes it really kind of low hanging fruit for a lot of people who want to make their home space more ecologically friendly, more sustainable. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So our next speaker is Pat Townsley. Pat Townsley actually owns and operates a Creekside Pizza and Taproom in San Anselmo, which is right near me. So I have actually been there. It's great. He built the business from the ground up based on community service, personality, outstanding and passionate staff, quality food, and best practices in environmental stewardship. The Creekside has won Best of County in Marin magazine for the past 3 years and Best Pizza and Taproom in the Marin IJ for 5 consecutive years, along with winning Most Community-Minded Company in Marin in 2022. And the IJ has also named Pat himself Best Business Person in Marin County for the past 3 years. He continues to be a community leader and an evangelist for local businesses, charities, education, arts, and human services. Pat lives in San Anselmo with his wife, Laura, and his daughter, Ellie, who holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies, of all things. So, Pat, on the website, it says that Creekside's mission is to make great food, offer a great beverage program, and serve its local community. And it's clear that for you, serving your local community also means operating in a sustainable way. So tell us, in the middle of your lunch hour there, the noise around you, tell us what inspired you on that mission and what have been some of the steps to achieving it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the time, and a great presentation ahead of me. And it dovetails off of what we do here at Creekside. We are live here at Creekside. I was going to do this in my home office, but we got so busy this afternoon. We're blessed to have a great community. Put your hands together here, everybody at Creekside. Thank you very much as we do this live. At one point, I found myself unemployable. And I just go, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do in my town that makes a difference? I've built a few houses. I've had the pleasure of working at Autodesk, at Skywalker Ranch, and now the Somita property up there where Skywalker Vineyards are. I've worked for environmentally conscious companies like Bar Corp. I've worked at the Salesforce Tower, which was built by the Kilroy Corporation, which is the LEEDS program. They really run with it and have built some fabulous commercial buildings out here. So when we started to build Creekside, and we did this from the ground up, and we really did this with the community because we literally crowdfunded Creekside. I mean, it didn't have a dollar. So it's like, how do we put this together? And how do we do it what represents where we are in Marin County, represents Mount Tamalpais and the rivers and the creeks around us here. And the way you operate when nobody's watching, what does that look like? When you're all alone and you're doing something, how do you operate as a human being and when nobody's watching? And I kind of lead that life. And I think we all bring as business owners who we are as people. we bring that to our business, and it becomes part of what we have here. It's part of our culture. And thank you for the accolades on the awards. And we have won Best Restaurant, Best Business, and this year Most Sustainable, what was it? The most business conscious community in Marin County. So we're pleased to do these things. So this was an empty space, basically. It was a pizzeria before. It's like, how do we put programs and processes in place that have sustainability in mind? And how do we get to zero? Much to our previous speakers, that is a big deal. And I'm a big reader of the recent Bill Gates book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And if anybody hasn't read that book or listened to it on audiobooks, it's fantastic. And I think it's going to resonate with everybody here and certainly on the speakers today. So when we did a draft beer program here, how do we make draft beer sustainable? Draft beer, craft beer is a chemical process. In the fermentation process, CO2 is released into the air. So how do we get beer from 50 feet in the back and keep it cold coming to our draft system over here? So we have a glycol system which runs 24 hours a day, keeps the beer cold. So we actually use less refrigerants, where we use less F gases. Our beer is pushed partially by nitrogen. So we have a nitrogen extractor. The air we breathe is about 78% nitrogen. It's not pure oxygen, obviously. So we actually have a green air technology machine which extracts nitrogen from the air, stores it in a tank, which reduces our carbon footprint in such a way that we do not have gas deliveries coming here, as most restaurants do. We do not have gas trucks dropping off cylinders of gas, because we're actually, I don't want to say making nitrogen, but we're extracting nitrogen here live 24 hours a day, storing it. And then we do need CO2 to push our beers, because our beers do run off of CO2. That you want the carbonation in the beers. So we use liquid CO2, and we have it delivered quarterly. So we have a truck that comes and delivers liquid CO2, pumps it into a tank here where we store it, and convert it to vapor CO2 where it expands. So when we have CO2 delivered, it is done on a quarterly basis instead of a weekly basis. So in that regards, we've reduced our carbon footprint and how many trucks are delivering here. We also minimize as many loads. The only thing we really have to have here on an almost daily basis is our lettuce. If anybody's had our lettuce, our sandwiches, salads here, we spend like $800 a day in lettuce, super fresh. One of the other things we did here is how to electrify Creekside. We've obviously changed everything to LEDs. The other thing we did was on a decision on making our ovens here. We actually did a lot of research on ovens. My business partner and chef here, Janet Abrahamson, and I trained with Tony Gimignani in San Francisco, the world's #1 pizza chef. We trained on all different ovens. There's literally a coal-fired oven in his restaurant. We did gas ovens, rotisserie ovens, and electric ovens. And we found the electric ovens as performance-based well as any. I'll go head-to-head with any fire pizza. So the other thing, when we're doing electric ovens here, that's a huge draw. They're 60 amps each, 240 volt, 3-phase ovens. We have double deck ovens here. We had them custom built by Marsal back east, and they were delivered out here based on our specifications. So in moving forward, we're looking, how do we get off the grid? How do we get to zero? How do we electrify what we're doing here? All electric ovens, and these come at what we call a green premium. If you read the Bill Gates book, you'll learn more about that. Our PG&E bill for these ovens is $7,000 a month. If we were using a gas oven or a wood-fired oven, it would be nominal compared to that. So we're probably at about a 500% green premium on that. But that's just one of the things we're doing. And I'm not beating up on anybody who's using a wood-fired oven, but we just decided not to do that. Also, those are off-gassing, and then we have to have wood bring it in, and we're polluting the environment. So, I love a good wood-fired pizza, but we're just not doing it here. What else? I don't know how much time I've got left. I can clearly talk a blue streak, so if somebody can type that in the chat for me. What else did we do here? We started off using these pizza boxes here from World Centric, and as we when the pandemic hit, it's like, well, how do we go from only 5% takeout here at Creekside? Everybody wanted to come in and eat for our first couple of years. Everybody was here eating. And then the pandemic hits, and it's 100% to go. So we went from 5% takeout to 100% takeout. And what we started seeing is that products like this, which are eco-friendly, come in plastic bags. Our pizza boxes, cardboard, come in plastic bags. These they're beautiful and they're great and they hold the grease, but they have a 400% green premium over cardboard boxes. And then we go to cardboard boxes and the grease and the water and the moisture is leaking through, and we have to pay for people's upholstery. So now we got to figure out what kind of liner to put inside the pizza box to keep the moisture from dripping out. And these are all problems that we look at as a restaurant, but as a human being on this planet, or a resident here in San Anselmo or in Marin County, how do we get away from, you got to put meatballs in something that's not going to leak, but then you got to put a plastic lid on it. So you don't want it to leak. It's very difficult to find products right now that are eco-friendly, and the County of Marin and the town of San Anselmo are very proactive in pushing a green program here. The town of San Anselmo has come out with an ordinance here in town, but to institute it's very difficult. They say go to 100% bamboo. There's 1,600 species of bamboo on this planet. They're mostly in the moisture belt of the equatorial regions. So now let's think about this real quick. You want to do a bamboo fork, right? Here's the 100% just organic green forks here, but our local resource recovery company won't take them because they're not made out of organic material. So even if they're corn or starch based, if it's not organic corn, they won't take them. And of course, it comes in a plastic bag also. What possibly could come or be delivered that doesn't require plastic or something? So I got a banana here, but of course, there's a plastic sticker on it. So even the most organic thing, the most natural thing, there's plastics on. If anybody has a counter for me to let me know how much more time I had, that would be great. What else? How do we go from a corn starch-based product that the recycling won't take because it's not organic corn, and the alcohol beverage control requires that we have a sealed lid on any beverage. So if somebody brought in a cup like this, we can't use it because it's not a sealed lid, because it's got a sippy cup. And the other thing that we learned with the Rethink Disposables, when we have kids' cups here and kids' waters and kids' drinks, they come in these cups with a straw in them. Well, we're using these over and over and over again. So it was almost counterintuitive to go to a plastic cup and find a fitting lid on here. But now we can reuse these over and over and over again, clean these, and we're not filling up the landfill with these. So there's so much we can do. There's so many things we have here. We have Marin kombucha comes in our stainless barrels. We have our organic wines on tap. We have a little quiet in the house, please. Thank you very much. We have glass bottles for our beer. We source our wines locally. Skywalker Vineyards is right around the corner. And like I said, I had the pleasure of working out there, and that's all estate grapes out there. And Christine, did you have a question for me while I take a breath?
I'm just here to say we're at the end of time, but Pat, I'm just amazed and impressed by your attention to detail and trying to work through all these permutations of what's considered allowable and what's not, always with this imperative of how do I reduce waste? How do I live more lightly on the planet? And I can tell it's something you try to solve it in a different way every day, in the face of more information, more challenges. But thank you so much for your time today. It was really interesting. And I'm sure a lot of people have got different ideas about what they can do when they get takeout, or maybe there are other restaurant owners here who are getting ideas about how to package more sustainably. That was fantastic. Thank you. So our next speaker, I'm very excited to introduce Dawn Agnew, who is the hospitality director of Terreno Wines and Vineyards. So Dawn has been dedicated to service and hospitality throughout her career, from working on hotel openings at the Ritz-Carlton to opening a world-class restaurant, Gary Danko, which won renown in San Francisco, which is one of the world's most discriminating food cities. Since then, Dawn has brought her leadership ability and her vision of service excellence to a diverse catalog of businesses, including many outside the traditional hospitality industry. She has presented to, mentored, and trained staff at medical institutions, tech startups, food startups, boutique grocery stores, and high-end wineries, as well as restaurants and hotels. In the past few years, she has expanded her focus to include sustainability as an important element of the guest experience, and has become passionate about the health of the ecosystems that produce food and wine. As a result, she's begun working with biodynamic winemakers, opening Hamel family wines, and working to open an urban tasting room for Terreno wines and vineyards in Jackson Square, San Francisco. So, Dawn, these days we often hear the phrase farm to fork, and it sounds like you've made that journey in reverse, starting with a fork and going to the farm. So, what kindled your interest in regenerative and biodynamic farming?
First, I want to say thank you, and I'm really enjoying listening to the other speakers. This is Pat. I will be tapping into your brain about that to-go stuff. I did take a little bit of a journey to get there, but I grew up in a farm town in New Mexico, a peanut farming town. And when I grew up, there weren't as many chemicals available to use, pesticides available to use as there are now. Now it's just, there are over 500 chemicals and pesticides used in America, 72 of which are completely banned in the EU. And they are continuing in Europe to try to phase out more than that actively. So we really have to embrace sustainable, biodynamic, regenerative practices so that we can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. And as that becomes more and more evident, we will hopefully see a lot of pesticides and chemicals going away instead of being used in the US. But my journey took me to some of the best restaurants in the country, in the world. And I was lucky enough to grow up during the Star Chef and the farm to table movement. So I was very invested in seeing where my food came from. I know people joke about that Portlandia episode where they tell you the name of the chicken or the name of the sheep. I can't remember what the animal is right now, but that was the journey that I was in. I was part of seeing Alice Waters bring that to the forefront. And I feel very lucky that I was at the forefront of that movement. It brought me to a great restaurant where we were talking always about where the food came from. And then it took me to wineries. And when I was lucky enough to be up in Sonoma and work with wineries that were investing in biodynamic production, I started realizing the importance of soil as the unsung hero of carbon sequestration and really taking that tool and strengthening it so that it can remove carbon from our environment. And that was how we were going to become, as farmers, net carbon zero or even negative carbon. So we have really, as farmers, invested in the soil health, specifically in the vineyards that I've been lucky enough to work for. Terreno Wines and Vineyards is the winery that I work for now. And we're building an urban tasting room in San Francisco and completely redoing the interior with sustainable options. We wanted a fire feature and we chose to go with a water producing fire feature. You just take a little tank of water, hook it up, and it creates steam, and these lights that go into the steam make it look like flame, and they're beautiful. So really using a lot of the products that are from reused or organic in production. And it's been a really fun journey as well to go into that LEED certified. I know that at Hamel, they used rammed earth, which is where I began looking and seeing all the benefits of building and interior decorating and what we're sourcing for all of that as well. But I do really want to talk about soil. I want to talk about regenerative farming and how important that is for us at Terreno Wines and Vineyards. We are committed to really strengthening our soil so that we are better prepared for the climate changes that we're seeing happen. We are doing a lot of research on varietals. We may or may not need to change those as we see our temperatures rise and our rain and moisture decrease. If we have soil health that is strong, we'll be able to really utilize less irrigation. We'll be able to put less water on our soil because it'll draw naturally what it needs from underground if it's stronger. We're creating a much, much stronger ecosystem and community of wildlife that will help us farm in a way that utilizes zero chemicals and zero pesticides, which is where we're at right now. We are chemical free. We are pesticide free. We have a very strong insectary. We have chickens, over 300 chickens that roam through our vineyards and take care of themselves so that they put themselves away at night so that they aren't going to be eaten by any other critters. And they are very, very independent creatures that are just helpful, very helpful in getting rid of our insects that are harmful and helping us keep the beneficial insects. We bring sheep in that will really aerate the soil as they move through it, and they drop on that soil to give it healthy manure. We create our own brews of tea from compost, and we spray the tea onto our leaves so that we can really bring in all of the sunlight that they need and help them from the soil up, so that they begin to really find success in their growing stages through these teas that are natural, that we're helping them with all beneficial elements that we can. So there are many, many farming philosophies and methods that we're using, biodynamic being at the heart of that, regenerative farming, regenerating our soil, and then again, giving back to the community in more ways than just are on our farm. So we've created a purpose line that we can donate to our unhoused, unfed nonprofits. We have one that supports LGBTQ+. We have one that is for climate specifically, and we have a label that is for social justice. So we take a lot of wine and we put it into these labels that we can literally donate and help nonprofits and all of our other nonprofit heroes that are out there working so hard to help others. So we believe that regeneration is at the farm first. It's in the soil, and then it is also in our community. I don't know how much time I have. I wanted to really touch a little bit about our tasting room, if I have a bit of time. Our tasting room is going to be open June, July. Thank you. It's going to be open June, July. And it is an incredible project that is going to be like no other tasting room the city has ever seen, for sure, maybe even any winery has ever produced. But it is a 3-level tasting room. Our ground floor is for traditional tasting. We have an executive chef who was at La Folie, a really incredible restaurant in San Francisco, for 8 years. He was with Roland Passot. So he will be producing very elevated wine and food pairings for our tasting room. Our second floor is an educational space with an exhibition kitchen where we'll be doing a lot of classes, wine and food pairing classes, wine tasting classes, probably some chef demos as well, maybe book signings, a lot of stuff is going on up there in that educational space. And it's also a member salon where our members can come and hang out and just have a glass of wine and some cheese whenever they'd like. And then our basement is a site that was an incredibly famous comedy club, Purple Onion, back in the day, in the beatnik era. And we are turning that into a supper club. So we have this beautiful space that has quite a diversified revenue generation coming into us that will be built around our members of our winery, and has a great buzz going on all the time because there's so much activity in there constantly. And we will be open in end of June, beginning of July. Our website, ecoterreno.com, tells you a little bit about opening, and you can watch that as we move forward with it. But there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in building that out with all of the sustainable products that we've chosen to use, and all of the sustainable products that we are going to be serving. So it's important to invest in what we drink and what we eat.
Thank you for that. I love the enthusiasm. So my takeaways are, I've got to check out that tasting room, but also I just sense your enthusiasm and the real thrill of discovery of ways in which we can interact with farms and with communities as a whole to be more regenerative in our focus. That was really lovely. Thank you so much for that, Dawn. So our next and final speaker is Sara Aminzadeh, who has been a California Coastal Commission member since 2017 and is a proud mom of 3-year-old son, Henry. She's a published author and frequent media commentator on clean water, climate effects, and coastal preservation. She helped write and advance key environmental legislation on oceans, coastal adaptation, clean water, and climate change, and is a 20-year nonprofit policy veteran with leadership positions at the California Coastkeeper Alliance, U.S. Water Alliance, and other organizations. Sara is now running for California State Assembly on an environmental platform. So, Sara, first of all, when you begin, I want you to say your name because I'm not sure I got it quite right. But clearly you are passionate about finding governmental solutions to environmental issues, and we thank you for that. So tell us, what can we as ordinary community members and business leaders do to make a positive difference for the environment?
Thank you so much. Yes, I want to just commend my fellow speakers who, from my perspective, really already covered a lot of the key things that we can do as individuals and as business leaders to reduce our energy footprint, to reduce our water footprint, and to reduce our plastic footprint. Water is definitely on my mind. We are experiencing one of the worst droughts in California history. And in 2018 and 2017, we then experienced the worst drought at that time in California history. So I think the other speakers have done a great job of covering some of the plastics and waste issues. And I'd like to focus some of my time on water. So one of the campaigns that I ran back during the last drought was around looking at our plants and what we have in the ground. Outdoor water use makes up more than 50% of our water use overall. So when I was a kid, we talked a lot about, turning the water off when you brush your teeth, or, putting a bucket in the shower, things like that during times of drought. And those things are helpful. But what we've come to understand is that if we can really make a difference in our outdoor water use, that we can make a big difference overall in terms of our water usage. Sorry about that. So I want to talk a little bit about outdoor water use. And during the last drought, I developed this campaign, Back to Our Roots, where I was really encouraging my fellow Californians to plant and install native plants, to really go back to our roots and embrace the plants such as poppies, succulents that are low water, and really celebrate our heritage, but also reduce our footprint. Lawns can be very water intensive. And what some scientists recommend, I have a 4-year-old son, and I wouldn't necessarily want to say no lawns at all. But what some scientists recommend is that you have a mattress-sized lawn per person in the household, especially if you have a family. So it's not that we have to go no lawn, but we want to be sort of reasonable in our water use in terms of what we're actually needing and wanting. So I want to take you guys actually outside to take a look at what we did. We removed the vast majority of the lawn around our property here in Kentfield and installed some low water plants and also something called a bioswale. So I got permission from the group, and I'm just going to take you guys outside very quickly. Here we go. It's actually raining today where we are, so just going to put my umbrella on. And as I'm walking by, I'm passing by my 2 electric cars, so low on my energy footprint as well. So this area of our yard, we actually had a lawn. We had a pretty big lawn when we moved in, and we noticed that it was taking up quite a bit of water. And we also noticed that we really weren't using it. My son wasn't using it. It was purely decorative. So what we've done here is install what's called a bioswale, which allows water, such as we're receiving today, to kind of slow down and slowly filter, rather than just running over a flat surface of a lawn, picking up some pesticides along the way, and then running off into the storm drain with some contamination. So this really allows the water to naturally kind of slow down and infiltrate down. And then we've also installed a number of native plants. So we have California poppies and succulents, a lot of the plants that were in my drawing. And, this really helps in a number of ways. It attracts butterflies and bees and other pollinators. It reduces our water footprint, and it really allows us to celebrate our California heritage and the plants that were meant to live here. I think at some points in the 90s and 2000s, there were some trends around
everyone wanted something that sort of looked like an English garden. And what I'm encouraging and what I've done in my own home and what I would encourage others to think about, especially in California, is to think about, what are the plants that were meant to live here? What are the plants that can thrive with very little water? That's what you really want to do when you're thinking about how to set up your garden. So that's sort of on the water footprint side. I've also installed what's called a gray water system, which allows you to use some of the lightly used water through your laundry and have that be filtered and go out to your yard to further reduce your water footprint. So those are the things that I've done on the water footprint front. I think in terms of the plastics front, sorry, just one second. Sorry, just getting our dog some exercise. So when we think about our plastic footprint, when I pack for the beach or any kind of outdoor activity, I definitely want to make sure I have my reusable water bottle, my reusable bag. I typically use a canvas bag. Then I'm reducing any kind of use of a plastic straw or the like. It really makes a difference sort of thoughtfully packing ahead and making sure that we're planning ahead so that we don't have to have any single-use reusable plastics. So that's sort of on the plastic front. And then on the carbon footprint front, a lot of the ideas and innovations that Nate described in his presentation, really innovative modern technologies are fantastic. But there are personal things that everybody can do to reduce their own personal footprint as well, such as meatless Mondays. One of the most energy intensive things every person does is sort of choose what they eat. And so going without meat, which is water and energy intensive, can be a great fix. We're really lucky here in Marin to have a lot of locally grown cheeses and meats and oysters. So always trying to select local foods and wines is fantastic as well. So those are some of the things I've thought about. And as Anne Christine mentioned, I am running for the legislature, and that is based on my feeling that we really need to do more to protect our environment. During my lifetime, I've really seen some of our water issues grow more intense and a little bit scary. There have been times where here in Marin County, we wondered whether we would have enough water. And climate change as well. We're seeing just more extreme conditions generally. So what I'm hoping to do, not only as a mom and as an individual in the community, but also as a decision maker, is really urge people to kind of step up their environmental leadership, take ownership over what we are all doing in our daily lives, and really do our best so that we can leave a thriving planet for our kids and our grandkids. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that. And Sara, can you say your last name just so we all know it, especially if you're going to be like famous on the world stage? It would be nice to make sure we say it right.
In my last presentation, I asked the host, you know how to say my last name, right? And he said, yes, Sara. So you can always go with Sara, but my last name is Aminzadeh.
Aminzadeh. Thank you so much for that. Well, thank you also for your passion, for your commitment, for your willingness to go into public service, because I think we've all seen it's not an easy road. But I really love your focus on how times now require a new level of thoughtfulness, whether it's packing ahead of time to bring your own knife and fork and bottle, or whether it's asking yourself, do I really just want to keep watering this lawn, or do I want to rethink the whole lawn thing? Thank you so much for that. And it definitely is inspiring. There are a lot of different ways in which we can take those lessons with us. All right. So now we are going into our Q&A period. So thank you to all our speakers, first off, for their thoughtful and informative presentations. We're going to be, after this brief Q&A, we're going to open up the virtual lounge, which will be your chance to ask speakers, speak to them more directly and at more length. But we just wanted to open up with at least a couple minutes of Q&A to start with, which is great because I have a few questions I want to ask. So Nate, I really want to know, what do I do for an existing home? Since I
Well,
can't build one of your beautiful palaces, what can I do for my existing
well,
home?
you know, most homes are already built, so we want to be able to renovate them. And it is a challenge. You have to understand what the house is. Every decade they were built differently. So the first thing you should do is get an analysis done by a qualified person to see what you got, your mechanical systems, your insulation, and things like that. And then you should get a very, very good architect that understands how to insulate, because if you do it wrong, it is going to be bad news. But you also want to do things as a system. So it's not just replace the windows. The heat will go right around the windows to the bad insulation. It's the windows, insulation, and mechanical system is step one, or one of the steps, as well as an air-to-air heat exchanger. And then you can do other things. But every decision is kind of a fork in the road, like a countertop. Is this a sustainable product or not? Is the cost going to bother me if it is a difference or not? There's no harm in not doing it perfect, but make an informed decision. There's so many decisions throughout the house, but going all electric is another big one of an existing home. You'll have to probably upgrade your electric service to do that. That's the one trick.
Yeah, you're so right. One of the phrases I've heard is make it tight, then make it right. So that's to the importance of insulating before, putting the fancy new.
Don't forget to ventilate.
Outdoors, right?
That's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That's great. And interesting, because what it kind of like with Sara's presentation, it underscores the importance of being thoughtful about a lot of elements come together to make a truly energy efficient and sustainable home. And you have to be thinking of multiple threads for that.
Yeah, you should master plan it so that you don't have to go backwards with your decisions. So think out the whole thing. Yeah.
Right. Which is, something I think we're all, it's easier to find a quick fix, like, oh, look, this looks like a good choice, but it has to be part of a larger plan. So, Pat, I was thinking how you had so many, you're so busy solving specific issues as well as like trying to think of the bigger picture. So what do you think is your biggest challenge in the big picture view of eco-friendliness and sustainability?
Well, thank you for that. We've come to an interesting time here. Like I said on the presentation, we were only 5% to go. Most pizzerias are about 50% to go nationwide. We just did a solid job inside. The pandemic hits and we go to 100%. Now we're starting to see people come back in. And how do we manage better? It's not something I can solve right away. It's a supply and demand issue. Where do these products come from and where are they going to? I think you need to ask the end-to-end question. Where's the water going that we're using? Are we using too much water? How do we conserve the water and compost this? We work with Marin Sanitary. We have all our different recycling options, but then we get a cardboard box that's wrapped in plastic or wax. And do we continue working with those providers that have, my computer right now is sitting on a plastic beer keg. We don't usually accept them, but they're one-way kegs. Instead of these stainless barrels, they send these 50-liter plastic barrels as a one-way option so they don't have to have the logistics and lose the stainless steel. But they're not recyclable. They have the recycle logo on them. So as human beings, we need to look at these products and make sure that they are compostable, recyclable, and our end source where they're going to recycling, where are they able to recycle it? Marin Recycling says they can't take these because there's colored plastic and there's black plastic. It's made out of recycled material, but it's not recyclable. And then when it comes to like the plastic forks or the paper forks or where are these coming from? Now they're going into third world countries, planting an invasive species of bamboo, removing what might be farmland and oxygen producing trees. Then now they're producing bamboo, strip mining those, pressing them into forks, wrapping them in plastic, putting them on a cargo ship, which burns bunker fuel, which is the worst fuel possible and is responsible for 3% of the global emissions. Then that thing sits off LA for a couple years. Finally, we get the plastic, the bamboo forks in a plastic wrapper. Is that the solution? Remember a couple years ago, it used to be save the trees, save the trees, save the trees. Now it's rape and pillage the trees. So we have to be very careful as human beings and as business operators in the sustainability overall model of where are things coming from how are they made, and do they resonate with us as human beings and as business operators, and where does it go in the end? So I try to look at things end to end.
Yeah, I think like the saying I once heard is there is no away, right? You throw something
Well,
away, there's
there's
no
always
away.
a way. There's a way to figure this out. And
Yeah.
to Nate's point, and we've got to electrify things. How do we make this planet electrified and do it in such a way? And I know it doesn't keep me up at night, but how do we get the electric storage? I've been working with a company here for the last year trying to get solar panels on this roof. Energy 2, Dave Benson with that company, we've been working on it, and we figured out a way to basically solarize about a quarter of the businesses in this end of San Anselmo. But it's a big project, and it's a huge investment. And the bigger picture, the challenge we're having right now in terms of that is the electrical storage. Where do we store the power that's made during the daytime? The capacity for storage is a challenge, and I think that's where our thinkers really need to spend their time. How do we store energy efficiently in a small space? And that will move the needle on electric vehicles. Transportation is a bigger deal because they go long distances and they have a real challenge with electrifying. And I think the electric cars are almost there. They're almost there. I'm not ready to give up my pickup truck yet. And I joke that my 240,000 miles on my truck, it's a hybrid. It burns both gas and oil. But my next vehicle will absolutely be an electric vehicle. But then we've got the storage problem, and when those electric vehicles pass on, where do those batteries go? So, thank you for the question. I hope I went.
Yeah, there are a lot of key technologies still kind of missing or in development for sure. But thank you for always looking for them. I know that you're going to be an early adopter when things are available. So Dawn, a question for you. You mentioned about the health of the soil. I was wondering if you could just say a little bit about how healthy soils help sequester carbon. I think you mentioned that. And then also for us as consumers, because we're trying to think about tips for people, what can consumers do to promote the benefits of a healthy soil if we don't have our own farm? How can we help?
Well, you can start your little farm in your backyard, and you can be careful in what you use on your lawns in regards to chemicals, and trying to get rid of critters. Don't use poisons. All the little things that we do at home are just as important in growing and using our soil. And planting natives. I mean, Sara touched on that quite a bit. Planting natives so you don't have to use as much water, and letting your wildlife roam. Yep, they'll eat your roses if you have roses, but letting your wildlife roam and drop their drops on your soil also helps. Soil is really an unsung hero. And it is it pulls so much carbon and stores it. So the reason it is our unsung hero is because of its storage capacity for carbon. And everybody is always, like Pat said, really talking about the trees and how important that is for our carbon sequestration. And soil is equally important. It really, really is. And we have soil in more places than we have trees. So we need to have that soil health at its maximum so that it can become a storage space for the carbon. And it is a huge storage for carbon. So it's pulling everything bad out. And then with soil health, you're also getting plant health, right? So of course, at our vineyards, we have much lower yields because we are biodynamic regenerative, but what we do have is much healthier. We don't have chemicals on our grapes. We don't have chemicals on our soil. So since we have all of this plant health that is beneficial from our soil health, it is then creating a community of wildlife that is much healthier, and water, our riparian area and our river is incredibly healthy because we're not giving any bad runoff of chemicals and putting that into the Russian River, which is our neighbor. So it affects the entire ecosystem by having happy soil and healthy soil, and it's really the unsung hero and part of this.
Thank you for that. That's great. I think you're right. Often we don't think about its ability to sequester carbon and how that makes a big difference. So I think Pat has one more comment he wants to make, and then we'll go to Sara. What was your?
Yeah, just on the back of Don there and our soil, we got about an inch of topsoil left on this planet. We need to really make the best of it. And please, for the love of God, people, can we stop using products like malathion and Weed Be Gone and any of those type of products where we're wiping out it just goes right into our ecosystem. Roundup, that kind of stuff, I get it. It's easy to spray out of a bottle, but you're not only killing the plants, you're killing our planet and every bug that it touches, and it goes right into the rivers. So let's stop doing that. In San Anselmo, they just banned 2-stroke leaf blowers, not just for the noise pollution, but for the output that those things are doing. So in this town, we're working towards that. But as human beings, let's stop poisoning the planet a little bit, just a little bit, just for me.
Yeah, I think both the leaf blowers and all that reliance on pesticides and herbicides and all that it's kind of human laziness, because it takes more energy. And I know this because I've stopped using Roundup like 15 years ago. That means I have to dig up those weeds. But I figure it's good. It's now part of my exercise routine. So Sara, I wanted to ask you one question before we go to the lounge, which sounds kind of cool. But
Yes.
What are the most important ways that community members can lessen their carbon footprint? You talked a bit about the gardening aspect, but what other things would you say are like your top tips?
Yeah, I mean, getting ourselves out of combustion vehicles, out of non-electric cars is really essential. And doing that as soon as possible. Not everyone can afford an electric vehicle and the charging infrastructure that you need at your home, but there are some great rebate programs and some other programs that the legislature is developing to offer charging infrastructure at multi-unit complexes and apartments, to also offer rebates for the vehicles themselves. A lot of people across Marin love e-bikes and e-scooters, which is a great alternative to a full-on electric vehicle. But that's one of the best ways that we can reduce our carbon footprint. And then I think Nate spoke to this earlier, but just ensuring that we're drawing on clean power wherever possible. We have a great community choice aggregator, Marin Clean Energy. There's also Sonoma Clean Power just to our north. So making sure that you get your energy from renewable energies is very possible in our area and is really important.
Well, it's definitely true that in this area and in many others, there's often a choice of different electrical plans, and with varying degrees of renewable energy as part of the mix. So here in Marin, we have MCE, which actually offers one program called Deep Green, which is 100% green energy. So, maybe you can't put solar panels on your roof because you're renting an apartment, or you don't want to, or you don't have the capital, or you're in a bad place for that, but you can still get 100% green energy from MCE. And so it's always worth checking out your providers. Also, to Sara's point about the expense of an EV, and Nathan's point about the expense of solar panels, both those things have been coming down pretty rapidly and aggressively in the past 5 years. I've been amazed. I mean, just like 10 years ago, I looked into solar panels. I thought, no, far too much. And then when I looked again 5 years later, I was astonished at how much they'd come down. And the same is increasingly true for EVs. The more people adopt these new technologies, the lower the price point gets. So I think if anything, the encouragement I'm getting is do your research, find out a lot of things have been changing from what we knew when we were growing up, or even what we knew a few years ago. So thank you, everybody. We're now wrapping up the webinar portion. It's been fabulous listening to all of our speakers, Sara, Nathan, Dawn, Pat. Thank you so much for your time today. So since we're wrapping up the webinar portion, thank you also to our audience for taking the time to listen and learn about making your lifestyle more sustainable. If you are listening live, now is your chance to go to the lounge for an extended Q&A session with the speakers. So thank you very much, everyone.